But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Ethan, anything to say?
You bet. No, thanks, Diego, and thank y'all all for joining. And I know probably across the country it's a little on the chilly side. We're down here in College Station, Texas, and so we kind of had some roads ice. I guess we had a Texas winter, put it that way. Kim Harris is out in Illinois, and she said they just broke the 0 degree Fahrenheit threshold. So our definitions of cold and freezing and needing to stay work from home are two totally different paradigms depending if you're in Texas or Illinois. And I know we got a lot of people from across the country here, and so thank you all for joining today. We're going to talk about livestock programs. We'll go a little bit about us and then dive into the programs and talk about, as Diego mentioned, some of the upcoming webinars we have as well. This is our second year working with Farmer Veteran Coalition, and so get to continue on with this. We ended actually last year with livestock programs, and so we're going to pick it up this year. I mentioned that there were going to be several changes into the livestock programs at the end of last year, and that this was going to need to be updated pretty promptly. And so we wanted to turn around, flip it around, and say, hey, these are the updates, these are the changes that have gone on in the livestock programs. Talk about a new program that's coming in, and go right in from there. Kim Harris is with us, as well as Brandon, Tom, and Diego will all monitor the chat. So if you have any questions throughout, we're going to take several little breaks to answer some of those questions. And without further ado, we're going to go from there. Again, bear with us. I'm on a single monitor this time, so using the best resources we got. And so bear with me if something goes wrong, but we'll rock and roll from there and hope everything runs smooth. So again, who are we? AgriLogic Consulting. So we are a agricultural, economic, and insurance consulting firm based in College Station. We have staff in Florida, Kansas City, and Illinois, and as well as in Austin, Texas. And we have, when you combine it, over 250 years of experience in program development, expert review, and administration. Our primary thing is developing crop insurance programs for the public and private sector, as well as educating, doing risk management education, which is what we're here today for. Those are our primary elements. We also do a lot of consulting with ag companies on how can we do this better, do that better, depending on whatever industry that we're looking at, sector of the ag industry. And so those are our three primary targets that we will look on, as well as some other economic and analysis that we can do, risk management analysis from that standpoint. Diego mentioned Farmer Veteran Coalition, great organization. We've enjoyed working with them over the last 2 years. If you're not a member, I would highly encourage you to be a member. They have a lot of great programs, and Diego's mentioned several of those, and you can go on their website and see a lot of the great avenues that they have and opportunities that they have for veteran farmers and ranchers. And of course, this presentation is funded by the USDA Risk Management Agency. There's the verbiage there that we have as well. So today, again, we're going to summarize the benefits specifically for veteran and beginning farmers and ranchers. We're going to talk about the different components and characteristics of the main federal livestock programs that are out there. There's 4 of them now. 3 have been going on for a while. And like I said, there's a recent new one that's been added. And then we're going to provide examples of how these different programs operate. So without further ado, let's talk about the Veteran Farmer and Rancher Program. So in order to qualify, you must be an individual who served in active duty in the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Coast Guard, any of our military branches, including the reserve components, and then you are discharged under conditions other than dishonorable. If you're a business, all business owners must qualify as a veteran farmer and rancher. And then, of course, if you're in business with your spouse, y'all have a partnership or whatever that is with your spouse's veteran status does not impact the eligibility. Only if me and Diego are partners, we would both have to qualify in order to receive the benefits. So what are the qualifications? All right, first, have you operated a farm or ranch before? If you have not, you qualify. So everything in green means you qualify. If you have operated a farm or ranch before, you go to this second question. Have you operated a farm or ranch for more than 5 years? If you have not operated for more than 5 years, you qualify. If you have, you need to proceed to question 3. Have you obtained veteran status during the most recent 5-year period? If you have obtained status during the most recent 5 years, you qualify. So it's kind of a 3-tier approach that we have here in order to qualify under the Veteran Farmer and Rancher. So what are some benefits? You're exempt from your administrative fee on catastrophic and buy-up coverage policies. Like your buyout policies is, I believe it's $3 per policy per county. Catastrophic, Kim, you might have to help me right off the bat. I think $655 an administrative fee, because the premium on that, there's 100% subsidy. I think that's, if I'm right on the admin fee, is $655.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so those, as a veteran farmer and rancher, are waived. You do not have to pay those administrative fees. So that's a huge savings. There's an additional 10% premium subsidy for buyout policies. We'll talk a little later, but we have a Crop Insurance 101 training modules that we released on our website to talk, that dives more into what are premium subsidies. And so basically with that, whatever that standard subsidy is, if it's 55%, as a veteran farmer and rancher, you get 65% subsidy. So that's a huge savings as well. Ability to use previous producers' production history for specific acreage that's transferred to you. Of course, you have to receive permission for that, but that's a great opportunity to build up your yield database. And then there's an increase, we call it a yield adjustment. We won't talk a lot about it today, but there's several programs. And like I said, you can dive in those training modules where instead of using 60% of the T yields, you get to use 80% of the T yield. So there's two great premium savings benefits. And then there's two great benefits as well to help boost up your APH. And like I said, we'll dive down a little more when we talk about APH programs, but great opportunity that we have with those as well. All right, beginning farmer and rancher, same exact benefits as our veteran farmer and rancher, just the qualifications are a little different. To qualify under beginning farmer and rancher, you must have operated a farm or ranch for no more than 5 crop years. The whole farm revenue protection, which will be the next presentation, the next webinar we have, you less than 10 years for that one. And then crop years are excluded if you were under 18 years old, if you're enrolled in post-secondary studies, that's up to 5 crop years, or if you're in active duty in the U.S. military. And so if I started my farm when I was 16, upon 18 and graduation, went to Texas A&M or wherever university it is, you can go to any type of post-secondary study, and then maybe you went to the military. All those years don't count towards your 5 crop years. And so you would still qualify as a beginning farmer and rancher after you got out of the military and started back, or after you got out of school and you're going back to that farmer and ranch operation, you still qualify as a beginning farmer and rancher. Of course, same thing, you must be an individual. Any businesses, all those business interest holders must qualify as beginning farmer and rancher as well to receive those benefits. All right, limited resource farmer and rancher. So that's available to those who have a direct or indirect farm sales that's not or no greater than the current index value. So there's the 2024 value in each of the previous 2 years, and then have a total household income that's below or at the national poverty level for a family of 4, or it's less than 50% of the county median household income in each of the last 2 years. So there's great programs available. There's several benefits through limited resource. USDA has a great tool that you can access to see if you do qualify. And so, like I said, I would encourage you to use that tool, put in the numbers, see if you qualify or not. And if you do, like I said, there's some good benefits that are available through the USDA programs. And with that, that was quick. Kim or Brandon, or Diego, do we have any possible questions that we need to answer or not? I'm looking right now about covering New Mexico ranches. We'll talk about that here shortly. Think anything else, Kim, that we need to add?
Don't see anything else on the chat. So
fantastic. So we'll keep rocking and rolling from there, and we'll go into livestock programs. If I can get there we go. All right, so some available programs that we're going to mention more in the next webinar that we're not going to talk quite as deeply, but I'm going to give you a 30,000 foot overview, are micro farm and whole farm revenue protection. That's at WFRP. There's the summary of business from the last year. So basically, in total in the United States, how many policies and what all did that gross and premium liabilities and indemnities from. And you can see micro farm. This is the second year, I believe, that this program has been in through the federal program, and we can see it's taken off tremendously. And we'll talk more about it. Basically, micro farm is a more streamlined approach of whole farm. To give you that quick summary of it, whole farm's been out for many years, and we can see that it's had continued success year in and year out. Also, another thing are rainfall index programs. So apiculture, which is our beekeeping, and then pasture rangeland and forage, PRF. There's also annual forage. We don't go into that quite as much. And we'll talk about apiculture and PRF in a webinar later as well. But we can see both of those programs. PRF is a top 5 program, I would say, when you're talking about federal crop insurance program in general, which includes everything that USDA RMA administers. PRF is a top 5 program in that, and you can see it's had tremendous success. Basically, and we'll talk more about that, but it's basically how much rain falls in a basically it's a grid level. So you may have 5 inches in your area, but maybe it only rained 3 in that grid in general. And basically it's all a deviation of how that works in a payments. Basically, when you have really, really dry years, hopefully if things in the index works out right, which it should align with current conditions, there's an indemnity that will be paid. We'll talk about a little more on that here pretty quick. On the livestock side, these are the 4 programs we're going to highlight. Dairy revenue protection, DRP. It's really taken off over the last few years as well, along with livestock risk protection, that LRP. And so we'll talk more about these. These are all these 3: dairy revenue protection, livestock gross margin, and livestock risk protection are protect price declines. And so they look at the markets and the commodity futures contracts in determining, all right, if the prices have decreased tremendously, there could be an indemnity paid out depending on the other metrics. New program coming out this year is the wing calf risk protection program. We've also talked about livestock programs because that sales closing is January 31st. Those other 3 programs, you're covering a quarter, you're covering a different period during the year. And so pretty much you can elect those throughout the year. However, like I said, wing calf risk protection has a sales closing of January 31st, and we'll talk more about that, but that covers yield and price, and it's primarily targeted for cow-calf producers. Give you those are some quick little sneak peeks on what we'll be covering today. So whole farm revenue protection and micro farm, again, it's a safety net that covers all commodities on your farm underneath one policy, and all commodities added together will determine if an overall loss occurs. And so if you raise goats, have chickens, run cattle, maybe you have a greenhouse, maybe you're growing some tree crops, perennial crops, whatever the case may be, whole farm and micro farm will cover all of those commodities under one policy. And so animal and animal products are limited to 2 million in expected revenue. And your exhibition animals, so if you have any type of livestock show animals, or you're using them for, maybe you're raising stock animals for a rodeo or something like that, that would not be included. Of course, your dog or cat are not included in that as well. You can buy whole farm revenue protection or micro farm with another buy-up multi-peril crop insurance policy, and all the indemnities are considered revenue to count on those. This is new. Used to previous year, micro farm you could not buy. So this is a new feature with micro farm that you can buy. Let's say you have corn. And you want a whole farm revenue protection policy for your corn, your chickens, your goats. And maybe you want to elect a multi-peril corn policy for your corn. Any indemnity on that will be counted as revenue to count on that whole farm policy. Don't want to give too much detail, but that's the metric on that. And like I said, we'll dive more in that in the next webinar. Coverage levels are 50 to 85% and 5% increments. There's no catastrophic coverage for whole farm or micro farm. And then there's a commodity count. That's a mathematical equation basically to determine how many commodities you have. And that's a basis for the diversification discount that they have in whole farm. All right, rainfall index policies basically provides for a lack of rainfall in that gridded area, as we mentioned, during a given time. So you have to elect 2 2-month intervals. Those 2-month intervals cannot overlap. So maybe you elect January, February, and March, April. Just for an example, you can also elect more than just 2 2-month intervals, but they do go in 2-month intervals. Rainfall values are based on the NOAA Climate Prediction Center. So again, same thing we want to highlight on these rainfall index policies is it may have not rained at all in your area, but that grid may have recorded precipitation. And so it's not perfect because, as we know, rain can occur from, we can have one fence line get 5/10 and the other fence line get 2 inches. And so that all is variable, but it all depends on what happens in that grid based on the data that's received from NOAA. Producer elects at least 2 intervals. You also elect a percent of value for each interval, productivity factor, coverage level, and a number of colonies or acres. And so that gives you a good taste of how these rainfall index work. We'll dive more into those in an upcoming webinar as well. But basically, this gives a lot of flexibility, as we will find out in whether we're talking about hog operations or dairy operations or livestock or any type of livestock operation. There's a lot of variability and a lot of differences. And so these rainfall index policies give enough flexibility to account for those differences among the operations. All right, now we're going to talk about livestock programs. Before I go into those federal side, we're going to dive into more of the private policies. So there's mortality coverage available through the private sector. Different insurance carriers will have different types and kinds of mortality coverage. But basically, I've seen this a lot in the livestock show sector and exhibition animals. We know, some of those heralded bulls that they use for rodeo, or the horses that they use. Some high dollar animals, especially in the breeding stock sector. When we have a herd bull that we spend a lot of money on or something, maybe we provide mortality coverage. So if something happens to him or her, that we get a payment based on that. If something wild unforeseen happens. And so there's the mortality coverage. And then livestock liability, I talked to an individual, I believe this week, asking if we would cover this, and we cover it to an extent. But basically, you need to look at your state laws, because every state's a little different on how, if individual goes out to your farm, and maybe if it's I don't know, maybe a bull went through the fence or whatever, and maybe that bull hurts an individual, or you're working cows, or maybe whatever the case may be. And like I said, maybe everybody's on a horse and the horse bucks somebody off. Who's liable for that? And so I'd encourage you to look at your state laws. And then there's also private carriers have liability coverage that sets in. It's an umbrella policy usually that will prevent your farm from whenever it'll help you out whenever, if you're sued for whatever the case may be, due to liability, whatever the liability that caused, injury that caused, or when your livestock hurts, maybe that bull charged into that individual's pickup or something like that. There's a protection over for those two policies. That's all available on the private sector. Farm Service Agency has a lot of great programs as well. There's the Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish, better known as ELAP. Basically, this is providing losses due to different weather events or disease when the time comes. This is all determined by the administrator. And I know a few years back, when there was severe drought that we all had, especially here in Texas, ELAP was triggering and helping pay for people to transport hay from long distances in, so the animals can continue to get fed and have something to eat, because the drought basically caused no vegetation to be grown. So that's where the ELAP program comes in. Livestock Forage Disaster Program provides producers on federal lands whenever it's lost due to drought. And so there's a lot of operations that utilize federal lands to graze their livestock. And so this is a great program that sets in on top, just in case wildfire or drought happens. There's some assistance there as well. Livestock Indemnity Program, probably also a popular program by FSA, basically provides benefits for extreme livestock mortality. So we all know that cattle operation, whatever it is, you are going to probably lose some if you do it long enough. And however, this program kicks in whenever a wildfire hit and killed all the calves, or whatever the case is. If it was excess mortality loss, this livestock indemnity program is going to have some assistance there as well. So a lot of great programs by FSA and on the federal sector that are available. And then, like I said, from now on, we're going to talk more about what's federal programs that are administered to the USDA Risk Management Agency. So diving into these federal policies, they're designed to insure against unexpected declines in yield or price from the sale of livestock or milk. Policies do not cover death, loss, or destruction of the livestock. I will say when we go into wean calf, you'll sit there and we'll say, well, we do cover livestock death, but we're basically on that one, it's the animal dies, they have a weight of 0 pounds basically because they didn't make it to weaning time. And so wean calf risk protection still covers yield on that perspective, and not necessarily if a calf dies, you get a payment like the mortality programs do. So we'll talk a little more about that, but for the most part, we're not covering death, loss, destruction, any of that in the federal side. Available policies include, of course, DRP, LGM, LRP, and then, of course, wean calf is brand new for cow-calf producers. So primarily in the federal side, we have programs for the dairy sector, the hog sector, and in the cattle sector as well, whether we're talking about stocker calves or cow-calf producers or fat cattle out in the feedlots. There are coverages available to them. And like I said, a long time ago, LRP was available for lambs, and that has been restricted now to not include lambs. I do know I think there's listening sessions RMA is doing now on lamb that's out there. If you go on the RMA website, you can learn a little more information about that. And I think they're doing a lot of data gathering, trying to see what would be best for our lamb guys as well. All right, so federal programs, just give you some quick highlights when we talk about terms of liability. For dairy revenue protection, of course, they say that happy cows are from California. And so California, we have a lot of dairies out there, as well as Wisconsin, Texas, Idaho, and New York. Those other top 10 finish out. When we talk about livestock gross margin, Iowa, we see a lot of hogs as well as cattle in Iowa. Texas, of course, is a big cattle state. And then go into Wisconsin, Kansas, and Minnesota, wrap out your top 5 there. LGM top commodities, swine, of course, takes that one head and heels away, as well as cattle. And then dairy cattle, the cattle is the beef side of things. Of course, dairy's on the dairy side. LRP, our top states, we have Iowa, going back to that swine element, Nebraska, Texas, big cattle states, as well as South Dakota and Minnesota, round up your top 5 there. Feeder cattle take over in LRP in terms of liability, followed by swine, and then fed cattle. Difference between feeder or stocker calves, or those below that are cow-calf operations, stocker operations. Fed cattle go out into our feedlots, and then swine are vertically integrated operations, and so they're throwing all the swine operations in together. So we're going to highlight dairy revenue protection. I won't dive deep into this one because I have a feeling that our people that we have on staff that are attending are probably not more likely in the dairy industry. I'm guessing we're looking more at our beef cattle guys as well as hog, and maybe sheep and goats as well. If there are some dairy guys, we have a lot of this information available. I'm going to cover the high points. DRP also, I don't want to bore you to death over the different mathematical equations that go into it, but it is a great program that provides protection against declines in quarterly revenue from milk sales. Of course, our dairy operations, that's your main commodity, is milk. And coverages are in 5% increments ranging from 80 to 95%. The insured selects a 3-month quarterly period. You also select a pricing option, different pricing components that are available, declared cover milk production coverage level, and then a protection factor. So like I said, I don't want to spend all this webinar diving into each of these steps when we can talk about more on the other sector of things that may fit more of the guys that are on this call. Milk and component expected revenue are based on futures. So we're looking at the milk futures. Values are based also on USDA Ag Marketing Service monthly average prices, and then the USDA NASS milk production reports. Sales period starts when coverage prices and rates are published on the RMA website, and then they end at 9 o'clock Central on the next business day or on Sunday, whichever comes first. All right, so that was easy with dairy revenue protection. We're going to go into livestock gross margin. So livestock gross margin, basically we're covering, again, as what it says, that margin. So as we all know, you have income that you bring in, you have expenses, and then wherever that difference is your profit margin. And so we're looking at that sector right there is what we're looking at against margin. And again, we're covering beef cattle, dairy cattle, or swine. For swine, we're looking at a 6-month period. Our cattle sector, we're looking at 11-month insurance period. There's a deductible that's in place, very similar to a lot of other insurance programs that we have. So for cattle, we're looking at $10 a head increments on your deductible, ranging from $0 to $150 per head. Swine, it's a $2 increment, ranging from $0 to $20. And then deductible for dairy, we're looking at 100 weights of milk. And so that's 10 cents increments, ranging from $0 to $2. Insured, you select a deductible, the share, and a targeted number of head, or the 100 weights of milk for each month. Monthly actual and expected gross margins are based on the futures market. Sales period begins on a Thursday of each week, and they'll all be published on the RMA website, and it'll end on the next business day. But again, so Thanksgiving's a perfect example, being on a Thursday. You will not be able to elect that because it'll be a holiday when that's all released. I will also say this about livestock gross margin. We talk about that targeted number of head. There are records you will submit to say, hey, I did sell this many cattle or this many hogs or this much milk on these different targeted months that we talk about. So give you a quick look at kind of the different contracts that we're looking at on this, how to determine the gross margin. So different types we have there on the operation side. So for our beef cattle, we have whether you're calf finishing, so you start from pretty much a wean calf up to finishing time. And then we have yearling finishing. So you started pretty much at a yearling, or when they were at a yearling calf, and then you fed them out until they got to a fat targeted weight that we're looking at whenever we start getting ready to harvest those animals. Dairy side, of course, we're looking at milk, swine, farrow to finish, swine finishing, and then swine early wean, sows early wean, pig finishing. And so we're looking at live cattle futures markets for our beef cattle, looking at class 3 milk, and then lean hogs is what we're looking at on the swine side of things. All right, what goes into these different costs? Well, for the cattle side, the main thing we're looking at is corn. I know we were feeding these cattle on the finishing side, some other things that may be a little cheaper option than we have on corn, but corn's the main product that we're looking at. Feed costs, we're looking at, so those corn contracts, we're looking at 4 months before on calf finishing, and then 2 months before on yearly finishing. Dairy, we're looking at corn as well as soybean meal. And we're also looking at that on our hog side as well. And then those are the months out that we're looking at going backwards. So feed costs 3 months before the marketing time. So if we market those cattle in March, maybe we're looking at the January on the swine side, if we're looking at 3 months out from farrow to finish. And then feeder cattle. So basically when we're finishing on a feedlot operation, of course, dairy, more than likely, the dairy's there, dairy's selling the milk. It's all that same operation. Swine operation's the same. You farrow those hogs, and then you're going to finish them out, and you're going to sell them at the end of the day. The cattle side, a lot of these feed yards, we're buying them at a different age. And so the cow-calf producer is different from the stocker producer, which is different from the feedlot producer. So that's why you see that other cost factor. You see feeder cattle. We're looking at the feeder cattle futures on that. Months before marketing, we're looking at 8 months prior. On calf finishing, which is probably approximate to about the time we're weaning those calves, from weaning to finishing. And then yearly finishing, we're looking at from when those cattle are about a year old up to finishing time, which is about 5 months in general on that. So that's where all those numbers are approximated from. Gross margin calculations. So I'm going to dive through a lot of these calculations and go pretty quick, but basically you put in these different numbers that they have constants. So what are we looking at? Basically, it's going to, when we look here at calf finishing. So that calf, that calf, by the time we're looking at selling him, he's going to weigh around 1,100 pounds, probably maybe weigh a little more than that, depending on what it is, but that's the average that they're using currently. And you're going to multiply that by the live cattle futures. Then again, we're looking at margin, so we got to take out our expenses. So what they've approximated is 52 bushels of corn. We're going to multiply that by the corn futures. And then that calf, whenever we start them out going back, we're going to look at the feeder cattle futures, and we're going to multiply that by 550 pounds. Yearling finishing, we're looking at a similar thing. We're looking at 1,250 pounds multiplied by the cattle futures. We're going to use 50 bushels of corn instead, and then a 750 pound feeder calf. Then dairy, again, we could go into some different complexities there, but we're looking at milk production multiplied by the milk futures. And then this is the one that we're actually looking at. How many tons of corn did we feed? How many soybean meals did we, or tons of soybean meal did we feed? So there's some actual numbers that we get to use on the dairy side. These other ones, we're looking pretty much, those are just general averages that the program has set. All right, our farrow to finish, we're multiplying by that 0.74 factor, because remember, we're looking at lean hog futures. And so to multiply that, you multiply by 0.74 to equivalent from actual hog weight to lean hog weight, which is basically what are those hogs weighing whenever we hang them on the rail after harvesting time. Looking at 12 bushels of corn, and then there's a soybean meal approximation, since we're looking at a per ton basis. Finishing, pretty much the same elements that we're looking at, except we're using the 9 bushels of corn, 82 pounds of soybean meal. And then our early wean pigs, we're looking at 9.05 bushels of corn and then 91 pounds of soybean meal. All right, claim settlement, pretty easy. You take your gross margin minus your deductible, and then that number of head or hundredweights of milk is based on target marketings for each month during the period. You will submit that report in. So pretty simple indemnity calculation, gross margin guarantee. So that's what you started at. And then at the end of the insurance period, you have an actual gross margin. So whatever that difference is there, you're going to multiply by your share and then multiply by the number of head or hundredweights of milk. So give you a quick example. So in Custer County, Nebraska, we have a producer who has a farrow to finish hog operation. You elect livestock gross margin for August through January insurance period. These are the different components. You're going to sell 40 head in November. You elect a $10 head deductible and have complete share. We can see you have a $64 expected gross margin, and then your actual gross margin declined. So their price declined, and that's $45 a head on your gross margin. So we're going to take a deductible out of our expected. So we're looking at $54 a head. And when we put that into our indemnity calculation, $54 is our guarantee. So we had a decline. So our actual gross margin is $45 multiplied by our share and number of head that we marketed. And we're looking at about a $360 indemnity. So with that, Kim, are we in good shape to keep rolling? We have some questions need to answer, or anything you want to add?
The only question I have a couple of people that have put like locations. When we're talking about these livestock protection policies, they're available in all 50 states. So I'm assuming that's the question that they're wanting to know, is if the livestock policies are available in their states, and they are available in all 50 states.
Yes, they are. The only one that'll be different is wean calf, which is a new program. And so we started with 4 states, but Kim is exactly right. Every other one is all 50 states that we're covering. So excellent. Excellent. We'll dive into LRP, or livestock risk protection. So livestock risk protection, we covers against declining prices over a given time. So you elect whether 13, 17, 21, 26, 30, 34, 39, 43, 47, or 52 weeks. And this is available for our fat cattle, our fed cattle, our feeder cattle, and our swine operations. Coverage ranges from 70 to 100% of that ending value. As an insured, you're going to select your coverage level. You're going to select your share, number of head, the target weight, which is our live weight for cattle or lean weight for hogs. Again, that lean weight is your actual weight multiplied by 0.74, and then the length of the insurance period. So we're looking at ag marketing service information in the futures market when we're determining prices. And this is a new one. Prices will now, basically the sales period starts when all that is up on the RMA website, and then it's going to end at 8:25 Central on the next business day or Sunday. I think previously that was 9, and they've backed it up to 8:25. And so that's a new feature in the LRP program. All right, types and target weights. So of course, feeder cattle, we have weight 1s and weight 2s. So weight 1 is 100 to 599 pounds, and then weight 2 are 600 to 1,000 pounds. We also have heifers weight 1 and 2, Brahman weight 1 and 2, dairy weight 1 and weight 2. And then there's this started a couple of years ago, the unborn steers, heifers, unborn Brahman, and unborn dairy. That's only for weight one, but basically what that allows is a producer to basically get their prices in prior to when those calves are actually born. And so while they're still in their mamas, before those animals or before those calves have hit the ground, and a person gets to insure them. And usually, why does it just weight one? Well, we're looking at probably about the time they're weaning is when that price endorsement is going to cover roughly. And so that's why we see that 100 to 599 pounds only available for unborn type. Just a little bullet on weight two. Basically, this is just a pricing dynamic, but bulls are included as weight ones, but they're not included under weight twos. And so we're only looking at steers whenever we get up there to that weight two range. Fed cattle are 1,000 to 1,600 pounds. So that's what I call our fat cattle, or our cattle that we're going to be harvesting here soon. That's at the feedlot. And then swine are 140 to 260 pounds of lean weight. Again, multiply by 0.74 to determine that. All right, claim settlement. So indemnities due basically when the ending value is below the coverage price. So very similar to what we have in our gross margin. So what is our expected ending, or whatever our guarantee is? It's our expecting ending value multiplied by our coverage level. And then if that actual ending value price is below, there's going to be a payment made on that difference. We'll go through an example. So basically, to make that determination, it's a pretty simple mathematical equation. You take your number of head multiplied by whatever target weight you're setting. The price difference, so it's our coverage price subtracted from our actual ending value. Again, that coverage price is the expected ending value multiplied by that coverage level. You're going to multiply those two steps together, multiplied by your share, and that's going to be your indemnity. So go through an example. We have Weld County, Colorado, and a producer elects LRP feeder cattle with the following elections. So we're looking at 17-week endorsement. We're going to look at weight two for our steers. We got 30 of those. So probably this sounds more like a guy who may be going in a backgrounding operation or in the stocker world. 850 is his target weight, 850 pounds. He has 100% share of those 30 head, and he elects an 80% coverage level. So his expecting ending value is $184.32. So to get that coverage price, you're going to take that ending value multiplied by that 80% coverage level. And we're looking at about $147 per hundredweight coverage price. At the end of that 17 weeks, our ending value, so maybe something happened in the cattle industry. We all know in 2020 what had happened when all the world shut down and prices declined. And so who knows what had happened on that deal, but the cattle market fell in this instance, and our actual ending value is $136 per hundredweight. So doing our simple math equation, we have an 850 pound target weight multiplied by 30 head. We're going to put about 25,500 pounds of beef on the table with those 30 head. We're going to take that coverage price. We're going to subtract from our ending value price. So we're looking at about $11 per hundredweight difference. We're going to multiply that by the total weight that we're producing with those 30 head. And so we're looking at about a $2,800 loss that we see there. We're going to multiply by our share, and we have a $2,800 indemnity. So pretty simple equation there on LRP. Basically, it's just it's setting a floor on your price. So if the price declines below that, like I said, it's a pretty simple product, but it is only price decline that we're covering in LRP. And with that, I think I'm going to check the chat. Are we good, Kim? Or
well, on Shelley's question about farm to table operations, a whole farm, specially and micro farm will cover pretty much everybody. So the trick is not the trick. The next step would be to find a good crop insurance agent that will be able to explain all these things to you. And we've got a locator, I think, at the end of the presentation, don't we, Ethan? That will provide information on where to find that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Perfect.
Yes, we will.
A next question for, do you have a separate calculation for grass-fed and finished beef? What we have there is how the policy operates at this point in time. There isn't a separate category for grass-fed. It's just looking at price movement.
Yes, absolutely. And we're looking at price movement. As we all know in the cattle industry, there's a lot of different, what I would call value add things that we can do, whether we're looking at grass fed, if we're looking at breed types. I know like the Wagyu has really taken off here recently. And so I think we're looking at what is the beef? What is the beef is that we're looking at? And so as Kim mentioned, the current program right now just provides for a standard calculation. But who knows what happens in the years to come. So great questions. Great. With that, we'll go into our last product that we're going to talk about, last program, and it's the new program. It's the Wean Calf Risk Protection Program. So this is an exciting program, given that those three programs that I previously talked about are price declines. And this is one adds a yield component to it where you're looking at actual yield loss as well, similar to what we see in other products, such as whenever we're talking about corn or cotton or soybeans, what we call revenue protection programs. This one aligns a little more with some of that when we're actually looking at yield. Instead of talking about bushels of corn or pounds of cotton, we're talking about pounds of cattle. And so let's dive into talking about it. Its basic design, we're looking at currently, again, given this is a new program, it's only covering what is called spring calves. And it is only beef cattle producers that this is covering for the time being. Provides decline in price, so similar to what we've just talked about, as well as lost yield, which is our weaning weight. Similar to other RP programs that are out there. T yields, which are basically conservative estimates that are being utilized if a producer goes in or a new producer and says, hey, I don't have any type of previous records. There are T yields available that can be used. And basically, they will be those yields you're going to use prior years, and those will be utilized to determine average weaning weight that you've had per calf. You're looking at previous 4 to 10 years of records. There's revenue protection with harvest price exclusion or yield protection. Coverage levels are 50 to 85% buy-up levels. Catastrophic endorsement is available as well. You must insure all cattle in which you have a share in that county. So personally, we run about 100 mother cows out in West Texas. And with that, we have 5 different herds, you might as well say. We got 5 different locations, but they're all in the same county. So if we were insuring those, we'd have to insure all 5 different herds, insure everything that's in that county that's applicable and available for insurance. You utilize there's a projected price and a harvest price. That's all a proxy off of the feeder cattle futures contract. This very similar dynamic to how LRP is priced as well. And then a notice of loss, of course, is required in this instance. It's not just a price decline. There's also, if you have a loss in yield, is it due to drought, blizzard? We'll go through those covered perils of covered causes of loss. There's the right word that I'm trying to come up with here shortly. So again, as Kim mentioned, those other 3 programs are available in all 50 states. Given this is a new program that's out, we're looking at covering Texas, Colorado, Nebraska, and South Dakota. And again, that's only for spring-born calves. So you're going to ask, what is a spring-born calf? Because spring may be different in South Dakota versus Texas. So the program defines it as basically a 6-month period, which is February through July. And then those cattle are typically going to be weaned from August to January, somewhere in that. So you have basically a calving period, as we see here on this calendar, from February to July, and then a weaning period, August to January. Sales closing date, again, is coming here shortly. I believe the prices should be released sooner rather than later. That should be coming up pretty quick as well, with the sales closing date nearing here in a couple of weeks. As we see projected price discovery, it's all looking at the November cattle futures contract, November feeder cattle futures contract. There's a discovery period. Basically, then that price is released prior to sales closing. You have sales closing. Then you're going to calve out those calves. So calve out those cows. So there's a 60-day, all that verbiage you see down there. It's kind of the fine print that we say. So you're going to, maybe you calve March 15th. So from March 15th, going to April and May 15th, around that 60 days is what you have to report calves. So there's a 60-day reporting window, and you can revise that as many times as applicable. But basically, that's how that program is going to work. You report your calves. There's a final calf report. So I won't go too much into the details, and there's a lot of training presentations available since this is a new program. But basically, there's a final calf report date of August 1st, which is the absolute last day that spring calf could be born, is July 31st. And then from August to January is our weaning time, depending on how that operation works. And then end of insurance period, you're looking at January 31st of the following year, and then premium and termination, and go from there on that perspective. So to give you an example of how this product works, producers going to elect revenue protection. We'll use in this example. Their approved yields that 4 to 10 years of records is 620 pounds per calf. They elect a 60% coverage level. So when you multiply 620 times 60%, you're looking at 372 production guarantee. You have 100 reported calves. Actually, I think that 372, we might need to look at that and adjust that. That might need to have a correction on. 100 reported calves, 100% share and price selection. You're looking at, we're going to say just a 10% premium rate for this instance. And then we're going to say throughout the year, you lose 4 calves due to insurable causes. And so whatever the case may be, maybe lightning struck them. That's a covered cause of loss. It's any type of natural disaster, more or less, or natural causes. Disease is also included in that. So maybe you had a wildlife outbreak and some coyotes or wolves killed the calves. Whatever the case is, those are insurable causes, and you lost 4 of them. And then your actual weaning weight is 340 pounds that you're seeing there of actual weight per calf. And that decline was due to insurable causes as well. So maybe blizzard affected the weight loss, maybe a drought. Those are several different causes of loss that do incur. So we're going to look at our liability. We have 100 calves. We multiply by our 372 pound production guarantee. And we're looking at $1.62 projected price that we see there. And because at $1.62, those are our prices there in that table, we see basically there's a price slide. So in the cattle industry, we know that the heavier you get, the more pounds of product that you're producing per calf, you're going to get a lower price. It's basically a price slide metric. So the lighter, the higher the price is per pound. Whenever you multiply it all together, yes, you're still better off as a producer. The more pounds you can put on those calves, the more money that's in your pocket. And so that's how this pricing works, just to kind of give it a general 30,000 foot approach. So we're going to multiply all that together. We got a $60,000 liability. Our premium, we're going to multiply by that 10% premium rate. And we got a little more than a $6,000 of premium that is due. Indemnity calculation. So we wean 372, or 372 is our average. Or this is our guarantee, excuse me. We have a 372 pound production guarantee multiplied by $1.62 projected price. It's a little north of $60,000 of our liability. All right, production to count. So we only weaned 96 calves because the other 4 calves died. Again, going back to that mortality coverage, it's not really mortality coverage. It's just weight loss. Those 4 calves weaned 0 pounds because they did not make it to weaning time. So basically that's a 0 pounds that we have there. So 96, they averaged out 340 pounds. We're looking at $1.76 on that metric. So we're looking at a little north of $32,000 of revenue to count. So we're going to take the difference between our guarantee from our production to count, or revenue to count, and we have $27,000, a little north of that of a difference. We multiply that by our share, and that $27,000 is our indemnity. So with that, like I said, that probably went awfully quick through all those different products. We're going to dive into a few resources that we have. Kim, do we have any questions we need to hit on real quick?
No, but well, yeah. Is there a minimum number of a minimum under wean calf?
There is not.
Okay,
there's
so if you have 3 cows, in your herd, you're eligible for wean calf. Okay,
that is
and then secondly, I think I want to kind of clarify back. Well, secondly, I have 3. Premium subsidy. When you show that subsidy of that premium of $6,000, there is subsidy against, that's total gross, correct? Not what the farmer pays.
that's correct.
So that will actually be less because of subsidy. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up, I just kind of want to clarify just a little bit. So we as AgriLogic don't operate and sell this insurance. The insurance that we're talking about here is provided by the federal government, and it is provided through private insurance companies. So earlier when I mentioned going to find an agent to, I think it was Shelley, there are companies that have insurance agents in your area that can administer and sell this policy. So it's crop insurance, federal crop insurance is available throughout the United States, and there are crop insurance agents throughout the United States that work for, they represent approximately, I don't know what the number is, 14 to 15 different companies. It fluctuates as companies buy each other, et cetera. But thought maybe we better back up and kind of explain that. We do not, this is not our insurance product. This is the federal government's insurance product, and therefore you can buy it through a local agent. So just wanted to back.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. All these programs that we're talking about, again, you can find an agent, and we're going to give you some resources to find a good agent. And our training modules talk about, some different traits to look at when you're finding an agent to make sure that you find the best one that's operated for you. Make sure they have the heart of a teacher and a lot of great traits, make sure they're honest and fair, et cetera, and so forth. All those good characteristics that we're looking at. But yes, we do not service any of these. We're just giving these education to y'all to see if something works for y'all. Y'all know a little more about, so whenever you go talk to your agent, you can say, hey, I heard about this program, and your agent can help you from there.
And I think we had some earlier webinars that talked about what is federal crop insurance, that you could go out. Diego, those are still available, correct? The ones we did last year. You can go out if you're, want some more information about federal crop insurance versus private. There are webinars out there that you can listen to too.
Absolutely. And I think Stacy asking about the prices, I believe when you're talking about the different prices, I think I'm not for sure about dairy revenue protection. Livestock
there are some
gross
local component or regional components, I think, on some of those. So.
There are regional components. Livestock gross margin and LRP are both. I think there may be some regional components, but I think for the most part those are national. Or yeah. I don't know about LGM. LRP, I'm pretty sure is a national. But they put some state or state or regional factors on that as well. Same thing with wean calf risk protection. There's regional factors available for that one for sure also.
And Mike brought up a good point. Not all agents are well versed in livestock policies. So
very true. When
you're interviewing an agent, make sure that they understand livestock policies. So
that's exactly right. They're very similar and they're all commodities. But there's several differences too when we start talking about cattle and hogs and dairy cattle versus cotton and corn and beans and all of our perennial crops and a lot of those different metrics as well. So with that, we're going to dive into some resources. Kind of going back, I wanted to touch on these different things that y'all have questions about. So saving it right for the end so you can have something to work off of. So RMA, when we talk about livestock risk protection and livestock gross margin, there's some different reports that you can pull to look and say, hey, this is what the rate is, this is what, et cetera, and so forth. There's a lot of good information about what the prices were last year or this year, 5 years ago. So you can find that there. I put a cool little QR code that you can have there as well. Great thing that's there. Kim mentioned that about the premium when we talked about that premium slide. I just that's more or less just to show how a premium's calculated. It works the same way on all these products. And that rate is not anything what that rate is just an example that we use, and I think I used 10%. So that would be easy calculations for everybody. So again, that's a good preface to make that Kim made as well. Go on to the RMA website and look, and even talk to your agent to really start getting honed down on what different products cost. So resources, livestock RMA has a great page that goes through all these different livestock products. There's fact sheets for them. There's FAQs. There's the policy language that you can go, because we didn't cover probably we covered maybe 5% on each program. There's a lot of different ins and outs and provisions that are in place to protect these programs and make sure these programs are operating in a manner that's appropriate. And so be sure to go on that livestock insurance plan, whichever product it is, whether it's dairy revenue protection or livestock gross margin. Click on those and you can go through those and determine if those programs are right for you. We're just trying to give you kind of that 30,000 foot approach on each one, dive into a little bit of detail to see if that would be something that may be available or something that you might need on your operation. Also, again, Kim mentioned finding a local crop insurance agent. RMA has a great locator tool that you can utilize. It's pretty easy to use. And another thing is go talk to your local farmers and ranchers. Your neighboring farmers and ranchers usually know that who or what's the best agents or agency to utilize in your area. And so great tools to use. Again, we'll talk about here shortly as well, the training modules. I think Diego's going to share those pages. Again, this will be published on the YouTube channel for Farmer Veteran Coalition. And then we're going to update the livestock presentation that's on our different training modules. We go through, forgot exactly how many different modules we have, but we have a crop insurance 101. We have how do insurance products work, finding a good agent, resources. We go into several different programs. So great, utilize that training module thing to, like I said, if there's something you need a little more education on, we go into premium subsidies and how those work, the different benefits. So great, both sources are great to utilize. Also, for our livestock products, the USDA RMA is doing a livestock roadshow, and basically it's a workshop series to learn more about improvements to annual forage, dairy revenue protection, LGM, LRP, PRF, and wean calf. And so great workshop series that they have there. There's a virtual one coming up here on January 17th, and that'll be at 7 o'clock Pacific time. So key in on that Pacific time. I believe they did one here recently. I watched some of it to help me prepare for this presentation. And I think you can go back to those and rewatch them. And a lot of great detail. They dive into a lot more detail. And I think it's about more of a 2.5 hour presentation instead of trying to cover everything that we covered in an hour's time. So I would highly encourage you to go on those. They go into a lot, like I said, a lot more detail about different programs and how they operate. But now you have this coming into it, knowing kind of some general knowledge of what these different programs are and operation. If you're anywhere close to these different areas, I don't know how many people we have in Delta Junction, Alaska, or Fort Pierre, South Dakota, or Galesburg, Illinois. But RMA is going in person, and there's some live sessions on these given dates. You can find all that on their Livestock Roadshow page. And like I said, a lot of great information there. If you can attend in person, that's great, and get to talk to those RMA guys. They're a great group of guys to work with. And they're very knowledgeable, of course, on the products that they administer. And then again, like I said, the virtual sessions on January 17th. All right, what about our upcoming webinars for AgriLogic and Farmer Veteran Coalition? So back in November of 2023, can't believe we're already in 2024 now. So I guess you can say last year, Diego and myself were in Washington, D.C., and we did basically a record keeping for managing revenue risk, and had a great time at the national convention there, and enjoyed working with everybody and seeing everybody live, and had a great time. I think we had a very informative session, which also set the tone for these webinars that are to come. I'm going to give you some dates. I want to just put a clarification that says some of these dates may change depending on our schedule here at AgriLogic, as well as Farmer Veteran Coalition schedule. We're going to try to also get these maybe some different times. We know there's some individuals who couldn't make today, so maybe we might change the times around, or if y'all think the times are good. I think the feedback is always helpful. on knowing when to set these dates and times. January 16th, of course, is today. We're talking about livestock programs. February 20th estimation, we're going to go into whole farm revenue protection and micro farm. We touched on those briefly at the beginning of this presentation. Then in March, we'll go into our APH or actual production history programs. Then hopefully sometime in April, we'll talk about grapevine and tree programs. Then in May, we'll go into that general liability. That's when we start maybe talking about maybe workers' comp or the liability of animals injuring an individual on your farm or property, somebody else's property. And then we're going to go into record keeping again. So that'll be a lot very similar to what we covered out in Washington, D.C. In June, we're going to go into food safety, talk about the different measures and risks that are involved when we're handling food. July, we go into apiculture and pasture rangeland and forage, talk about some updates that are made there. And then in July, we're going to cover some of the programs administered by the Farm Service Agency and other risk management programs that are available. We might touch on some of the stuff that happens on the private sector, such as the mortality and the liability coverage that we talked about. And then in August, this is really exciting that we've designed. It's going to be a risk management, basically open discussion or open forum, however you want to call it, town hall. Basically, we're going to let y'all pretty much the guests that we have here on the webinar and participants, we're going to let y'all pretty much take this webinar to wherever it needs to go. If y'all have questions about production, any type of risk management products, finding a good crop insurance agent, anything that you have questions about, of course, we're going to keep everything, whatever you need. And we're going to take some subject matter experts as well. We might bring in on some different dynamics so we can cover all of our bases. But it's going to be a pretty cool time. We're going to spend, I don't know exactly how long, but basically have an open question and answer to help answer all your questions that we may not cover in these other presentations. So really excited about this schedule that we have coming up. Hope you enjoy, and I want to make sure you have all these different resources that we have. Maybe you don't need to know anything about food safety, but you need to know something about pasture rangeland and forage. So I want to provide this kind of tentative schedule that we have. Stay tuned on Farmer Veteran Coalition, the email page, the email blasts that come, as much as social media outlets that come. And the AgriLogic Consulting side, we're going to, we'll piggyback and send our own information as well. Like I said, this is a great program that we have for Farmer Veteran Coalition, and hopefully give you all plenty of great resources to utilize. Risk Management Agency, they have outreach and education branch. If you want to know anything more about a lot of the great things that USDA RMA is doing, there's some QR codes for that. And there's our information as well. The team that's on this and our phone number and email if you have any questions. And with that, I guess we'll open it up to any more questions. Diego, if there's something you want to hit on, or Kim, if there's something that I didn't include, and thank y'all again for the time.
All right. Anything to say, Kim, before I finish it off?
Nope. Great job, Ethan. And I think everything was covered there, but if anybody has any questions that we haven't answered, there was one, about Shelley's question about farm to table agritourism. As far as farm to table, whole farm revenue protection would be a good webinar to tune into for that.
Yes.
Agritourism, that encompasses a large amount of, that could go a lot of different ways. So I'm not quite sure what we're looking at there, but again, whole farm revenue would be a good place to start.
All right. And then with that, I'll go ahead and finish off the webinar. So thank you again for joining us today. It was a lot of information. It's being recorded, it'll be on our YouTube channel within a week. If you need more information, please reach out to AgriLogic or us as well. We can pass along your questions. There will be a survey after this webinar. If you can answer those questions, it helps us with our future webinars, as well as if you need different times for our webinars. Right now we do noon Central Time, but if you need a different time, like we can do mornings, afternoons, even the evenings if needed. Put that in the survey and we'll work on that as well. But thank you to Ethan and everyone else at AgriLogic. Looking forward to our next webinar. Be on the lookout for that. And yeah, hope you have a great day. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank y'all.